So, good evening, everybody. My name is Melissa Ziobro, and I am the curator here at the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music at Monmouth University, just a mile from the beach in West Long Branch. Tonight, we are chatting with Frank White about his book, Jersey Metal, A History of the Garden State's Heavy Metal Scene. And this is volume one. We'll talk a little more about volume two and some other exciting projects in a little bit. Well, why are we doing Jersey Metal? Well, remember, we are the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. So while we are Bruce's official repository, we also tell broader stories about American music history with our exhibits, our publications, and with programming like this. Before we dive into chatting with Frank, just a few housekeeping details. And as always, I apologize to our regulars who come every month, but we get different people in the audience every month. And it is my job to spread the gospel of the Bruce Springsteen Archives. So let me tell you all a little bit about us if you are not familiar. As I said, we are located at Monmouth University in West Long Branch. That's just a mile from the beach and just up the road from famed music mecca Asbury Park. We do preserve the legacy of Bruce Springsteen. As I noted, we are his official repository, but it's not just about Bruce, it's about celebrating American music history in all its styles and forms. And as a public historian, I really believe that music is the most accessible way to learn about the past. So, we here at the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music are currently in the midst of building a brand new 30,000 square foot facility, which is scheduled to open on the Monmouth University campus next spring of 2026, just in time for America's 250th birthday. Our new building will feature a roughly 250-seat theater, exhibits, an archive for research, a gift shop, and more. You can see more about our work on our social media or our website, which is springsteenarchives.org. You can also donate on our website if you are so inclined, because, as I'm always reminding people, we are a 501c3. I will drop our link tree in the chat so you can get connected with us if you aren't already, because there's just so much going on all throughout this summer and especially into the fall when we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Bruce's album Born to Run with a number of really exciting events. So you'll want to keep in touch. Thank you for letting me introduce us to you all for a bit because, like I said, we always have some new names on our registration lists for these events. So, okay, back to tonight's program. So, Conversations with Our Curator is a free monthly web series that features researchers and writers exploring new perspectives in American music history. I really wanted us to have some programming that was free and that was available to everyone, regardless of whether or not they could visit us at the beautiful Jersey Shore or not. So after some initial questions from me, I will then open the floor to audience Q&A. So feel free to take notes as we start. I do like to keep these events to no more than 1 hour. So I actually just posted the books throughout the end of 2025. So if you want to see what is in the hopper, you can see the whole list on our website, which again is springsteenarchives.org. So with all of that introduction there, let's pivot and put the focus on Frank. So Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself, right? You've been a music photographer for over 40 years.
Yes, actually, it's been 50 years this year. And born and raised in New Jersey in Bergen County. And I started being into photography with my mother, who was a photographer in the 40s and 50s. She worked for a photo studio in New York City, and she would start to show me her photos that were first photos, prints, and then she would show me some slides that were on the wall of our home to just make a kind of like impression, I guess, on me, because when I saw these gigantic photos, I was like, wow, I want to do this. I want to, take photos too. So she would teach me how to use the camera. And from there, I was also getting into music. This is in the late 60s. And I started to sell things like flower seeds. I was selling candy and boosters with my uh, uh, clubs like Cub Scouts and Little League and my school. And they would, encourage me to go out there and sell door to door. And I did that. And that would come later on with selling photos to magazines. But in the meantime, I was learning the photography from my mother. My parents, they would let me go take photos around the town that I lived in and, my neighborhood, and take photos of the kids that I would hang out with. And it would end up turning more into like going to parks to take photos there. And so I was just learning how to take different things photo wise. And then I wanted to see a concert because I was very much into music. And the concert that I wanted to see was Led Zeppelin. I liked them for several years, up until 1975. And so I decided to take a trip into New York City, and I had to make a plan, how to get in there. And my mom taught me how to take the bus into New York City because she didn't like to drive. And she would just show me how to take the bus in. And I kind of copied that and was able to get some film after taking my mom's camera without her knowing about it. And I went to a camera store right along 8th Avenue that goes down towards Madison Square Garden. My father has taken me there before, so I knew the building and I knew how to go there. And I was able to get a ticket down in the orchestra, and I was able to go catch my first concert at 12 years, like 11 and a half, going on 12 years old. So it was pretty exciting. I was like really thrilled that I was able to see a show like this. And, it was amazing. It was totally amazing. And my photography came out really well for the first time, at a show like that. I was really nervous because my parents didn't know that I was in New York City. They thought I was in my neighborhood. And then, I was able to get away with it because I was able to get home in time before the curfew that I had that night. And since I got away with it the first time, I figured, well, let's see if I could do it again. And that lasted for a couple of years before I got my own camera. And then I was telling my parents I'd like to go to a concert with a friend of mine. And so that was in 1977. So, I was able to do all this without them knowing about it. And I kept that secret until my mother was in her 80s. And I told her because my book was coming out. So figured I'd let them know what went on back then.
Oh my gosh. Frank, first of all, I can tell I'm in trouble because you're a great storyteller. It's going to be hard to keep it to an hour here, but let
Sure.
me ask you some follow-up questions. I'm intrigued by the idea that your mom was a photographer.
Right.
This is a little off topic, but do you have a lot of her work still, or did it stay with the studio that she worked for?
Yeah, it stayed with the studio. And I do have some of my slides that I took with her camera in the early 70s before I started taking music photos.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's still alive. In fact, we just interviewed her recently, and she turned 94, and
Oh,
she's still going strong. My father passed several years ago. He was about 88 when he died. And I miss him dearly. And he would love to have known that we were able to come out with a book like this and then do a documentary about it
oh, I love it.
same
So,
time.
what was your first camera? Do you remember? Not your mom's, the first one you bought.
I had a Yashica. A Yashica. It was one of those kind of cameras that I was just made aware of when I went into the camera store one day. And they thought that that would be a good camera for the work that I want to start
Yeah.
doing.
Do you have a favorite camera today?
Yes, I use a Nikon
Okay. Okay.
D8. They're Nikon D850s. They're just below the mirrorless cameras,
Okay.
which I'll probably eventually trade out my cameras for those. I have a friend of mine who has he works in a store outside of Philadelphia, and he usually does these trades with me, so I can, keep updating my equipment.
Love it. Love it. So now I have to make sure I understood this right. You were 11 and a half, 12 years old when you snuck into the city to see
Yeah,
Led Zeppelin.
right. Oh, it was like, I told my parents that I was going to be in the neighborhood visiting a friend of mine around the corner. So they kind of trusted me with the fact that I wasn't going to go into New York City. They had no idea. This was just something I just came up with one day because I was so infatuated with seeing live music. Because in the late 60s and early 70s, I would see all these TV programs like Ed Sullivan, Don Kirsh's rock concert, in concert, and they would all have these live bands, and kids, teenagers and stuff would be watching in the audience, and I wanted to do that in person as well. And Led Zeppelin was sort of like the first major artist I wanted to photograph.
Amazing.
They
And what
just they just brought me in. I could just feel like I wanted to be there so bad, and so I had to come up with this crazy lie. And I stole my mom's camera, and it just happened. And then it just kept going from there. I saw other bands that year in '75, like Robin Trower, Chicago, Alice Cooper with Susie Quattro, who I just basically caught like the last song as I was heading inside. She was like just getting done, and so I was also seeing that year Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, and Rainbow.
amazing. So I mean, this work has been your entire life.
Yeah, it has been pretty much. And also lately, I became a cultivator for almost 4 years now. I've been working in the marijuana industry here in New Jersey because it happened. A grow facility moved into my neighborhood, literally 2 minutes from where I live, and so I just decided to see if I can get kind of like something where I had a healthcare insurance, because as a music photographer, you have to get your own. And so my wife said, "Hey, why don't you just see if you can get, another kind of career besides the one you're doing?" And it was right down the street. So I figured, what? Let me give it a shot. And I ended up being a cultivator. So I grow marijuana.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
So I love that background. So now let's work up to the book, right? It's Jersey Metal, A History of
right,
the Garden State's Metal Scene, and this is volume one.
right.
Tell the audience how you and your co-author, Alan, how do you define metal as a genre?
I define it as a very entertaining, heavy kind of music that you really have to adjust to if you've never been involved in the scene or have been to any heavy concerts, that the music is twice as loud as probably what you're used to listening to. It was something that I got into very early on because of going to Led Zeppelin and other shows, and the heavier music really interested me more than the lighter music. But I do like some of the lighter music on occasion, but I think the heavier music just energizes me. It wants me to, it makes me want to do more things, to just it just lifts me up, and gives me a good feeling, and makes me want to go out and enjoy stuff, and and see concerts and be part of the scene like I've always been. And that's the reason, part of the reason why I want to do this book, because I was part of the music scene in New Jersey, more on the heavy metal side, um, for over 40 years, and so I wanted to do something about that, in my later years, because I was able to collect, you know, decades of photos. And I'm also a photo agent called Frank White Photo Agency. And I've been doing that since 1986, selling photos for other photographers like Getty and, some of the other agencies that are out there. And, I make a percentage off the photos that I sell for other photographers. And, that supports my career. And everyone seems to like the work I do for them. I end up getting them product like magazines, books, maybe a CD, an album, depending on what I sell for them. And I keep a good rapport with everybody, and it really helps out, in general. And then some of these New Jersey photographers have photos of bands maybe that I didn't get a chance to shoot over the years, or I get some of the photos from the band members, and then all that supply goes into like just the stock of what we have, and then we go through the bands and see which photos are the best to lay out in the book.
I love your description of the music and how the music you love should make you feel good and should motivate you. And I think
Yeah,
that's a similarity, regardless of the type of music people like. That's what they look for. That's what draws them to their preferred genre of
yeah.
music.
I mean, it's very entertaining for me, and it gives me such good feelings inside, and it just makes me want to keep on listening to it. The people that I meet and become friends with, you know, very cool people to hang with. I have many memories, and some of them are in the book that people are reading now.
I love it. You mentioned some bands that are heavier and some that are lighter. Can you give
Right.
us a few examples for those who aren't familiar with the scene of some that are heavier and some that are lighter?
Okay, so for instance, Iron Maiden, very heavy band, tons of great hits, compared to, let's say, Dave Matthews,
Mhm.
or maybe Bruce Springsteen, not as
Mhm.
heavy as, let's say, Iron Maiden or Metallica, or Black Sabbath, but they're very entertaining bands. Their music has been around for decades. They fill up stadiums just like Bruce does.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
So, your book is specifically about the Jersey metal scene. Was
Right.
there anything different going on in the Jersey metal scene versus elsewhere geographically?
Well, I think the fact that we're between New York City and Philadelphia, a lot of people that live in our state seem to have a lot of different things that they want to do in life, I guess, because of the type of musics that we have. We have all different types of music here in our state, from rock, rap, dance, pop, heavy metal, all kinds. And we have a lot of talented people in our state that love to play music. And there has been always a big entertainment. Our state has been very entertaining people for decades, in music, since like the 50s and even earlier than that. And just, I think, with the heavy metal, it's been played in different clubs and theaters and arenas throughout the state. And they uh, bring in people from all over the world, come to New Jersey sometimes to see shows. And, it's amazing that the people that I get to run into, I think that, you can basically go from one end of the state to the other. If you needed to catch like an afternoon show or an evening show, you have time to do that. Other states are really, a lot bigger, and would take a lot longer. So, I think our state's very easy to get around. And back in the day, in the 70s, there were like a ton of clubs because of the drinking age. And then that changed in the 80s because the drinking age changed. And so some clubs went out of business, and then other clubs came in later on. And that brought in a whole new clientele of people. And it was able to flourish throughout the decades.
You know, you led me perfectly to my next question. What were some of the key venues in the Jersey metal scene in this early period?
So like you had Asbury Park, number one, you had Convention Hall, the Paramount Theater, you had the Stone Pony, Fast Lane, South Jersey, you had Bonnie's Rocks, you had the Galaxy, Blondie's, you had the Trenton War Memorial, I think that place down there, the venue, had shows. You had, of course, in Northern Jersey, you had Giant Stadium, Capitol Theater. You had bars like the Circus in Bergenfield, the Hole in the Wall in Rochelle Park. You had Mothers in Wayne, New Jersey. You had the Fountain Casino in Aberdeen Township. You had the Cuts from Ho and Paramus. You had, let's see, like you had, what's that place called? The Soap Factory in Palisades Park. And so a lot of these places would bring out all these musicians and bands, and then, that helped drive the people to come see them. And, that helped the scene fuel itself.
Listen, that was an exhaustive list off the top of your head, Frank. That was good. That was good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So, this volume one of the book focuses on the period of 69 through 86.
right.
How did you pick those years specifically?
Well, originally, our book was going to be from 1969 to 2021. But as we were making the book, it would have been like over 1,000 pages. So we decided to cut it down into 3 books. And we just picked 69 to 1986 because those were pretty vital years for a lot of musicians here in the Garden State. And we were able to, find a lot of the older bands that most of them were still alive, and were able to give us some stories and photos. And we just pieced everything together like a puzzle. And it was one hell of a puzzle.
It really does sound like it was a labor of love. And you
It
are
was.
working
It
on
was
volume two, right?
volume 2 we're working on right now, and we're working on a documentary, believe it or
Tell us
not.
about them.
Yes. The director and producer, his name is Mike Schnapp. He was working in the record business as a promotion guy from the 80s into the 90s. And then he became a DJ, an actor, and he also became a director, and he started doing documentary films. And so he heard about the film. I'm sorry, heard about the book and heard about the excitement around it, and he loved the title. And without reading a page of the book, he decided he wanted to be part of it because he knew me from the 1980s, photographing him at shows, like at parties. And he knew Alan from his bands in Hades, Nonfiction, Watchtower, and wanted to be a part of our project. And so far, it's been working out really well. We've interviewed quite a few musicians, either from New Jersey or from elsewhere. And one of our biggest interviews was just recently with Kirk Hammett from Metallica, who they were just touring in our area recently in the South, in Philadelphia and Maryland. And we were able to do an interview with Kirk in his dressing room at the Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland, a couple weeks ago. And it went really well, and we had a great time. We hung out with Kirk for a while, and then we were with the other bands, Suicidal and Pantera, and their When We Were Where You Eat, and we were able to just have a good time and just reminisce about the old days.
I love it. This is exciting for me both as a music lover and a historian because you are doing a historian's work here
Right.
in documenting this, for the future.
That's right. That's right.
Will the documentary cover both volumes 1 and 2 of the book? That is, will it go from the 60s up to the 21st century?
It's going from 1969 to the present day.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we have a third book out too. Once we're done with volume two, 1980, 1987, 2004, we then begin on volume three, which is 2005 up to about 2021. We'll see how it goes, because basically when we started the book was when COVID hit,
Mm.
in 2020, right? And we I think the last show I saw was in New York City, which was Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. He had a band called British Lion. And that was like the last show I saw in February of 2020. And we just started working on the book at that point. And not being able to go to shows for a couple years, and not able to hang out with many people, that gave us so much opportunity to work on the pages of the book, and it made it go a whole lot smoother and get it done within a certain amount of time, as opposed to, let's say, if everything was open back then and we were going there, here and there, and it might have taken us longer. So it happened to work out for us in that respect.
It's so interesting you mentioned COVID, Frank, because I have interviewed other authors as a part of
Right.
this series who referenced COVID as well and how it either inspired their book or it provided the time to work on their book. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that good things came out of that exceedingly difficult time.
Yes. Yes, it did for us. It did.
So you talked about volume 2 and volume 3 and a documentary, but there's also a beer coming out, isn't there, Frank?
Yes. I'm glad you know about
Tell
that.
us about the beer.
So, because of the book being born out of the club scene in the late '60s, early '70s, um, I wanted to see if possibly I could do a beer uh, with the book title. And so I went to one company in New Jersey, and they liked the idea. They loved the book, but I think it was the amount of distribution of the beer that was bothering them. They didn't want to go too far, and it seemed like, okay, so I'll have to find some other brewery. And I happened to find one in Hightstown, New Jersey, which is right in the middle of New Jersey, which is great. And they happened to love the book when they saw it. It was due to an in-store that we did right in front of the brewery in a store called Randy Now's Man Cave. And Randy Now used to run City Gardens in Trenton in the 80s, 90s. And I ended up photographing there on a few occasions and hung out with Aunt Randy. And so I got to know him a little bit then. And then when his store came out, Alan and I were able to do an in-store appearance at his store. And that's when he said to us, "Hey, I have a brewery behind us. I hear that you want to do a beer about your book." So the next thing you know, I'm going inside the brewery and I'm handing one of the bartenders a book, and gave him a card and told him who I was and what the book was about. And I said, "Hey, if your brewery here would like to do a beer after our book, we certainly appreciate that." And within less than a year's time, we now have a beer coming out, and it'll be out on September 13th. And we have a party, and anybody's invited to go down to the old Hightstown Brewery in Hightstown, New Jersey on September 13th. And you could taste Jersey metal beer for the first time. It'll be very exciting. And, we're going to have the beer go into some of the clubs that are in the books that we're writing on. And we'll probably get into maybe some of the stores in New Jersey, and you never know where else the beer will go. But it's a new adventure, and I'm glad to be able to be behind this with the the book and the brewery, and so I'm really excited for it to come out.
I am so jealous. I want a beer named after one of my books. That's just the coolest thing, Frank. I'm very jealous. So the
Thank you.
beer will be out September 13th. I don't want
Yes.
to put you on the spot. Do you have dates for the books and the documentary yet?
Uh, no, I don't have an exact date for either one because we're in the middle of both. And so the documentary, I know, will probably have a release date somewhere in 2026.
Okay.
I'm not sure when, but from what I understand, if everything goes according to plan after the film is done and we go over it, then it would probably end up going to some film festivals and then maybe some movie theaters, and
Awesome.
then maybe on the streaming channels.
Awesome.
And by the way, the our Jersey Metal beer, it will be an American lager, about 4.5, 4.8 alcohol content, and it'll come in a black can with white lettering, and it'll look just like our shirts that I'm wearing right now. So it's exciting, and
I
it's
love
just
it.
something. It's something where now we're have a lot of promotion in another new way, with a QR code on the can and everything, so people can go right to our website and check out our book and all our merch that we have for sale.
I was just going to ask, so is the best way for people to keep in touch, to stay abreast of everything, your website, jerseymetalbook.com?
Right, exactly.
Awesome. So everybody, I dropped that in the chat for you. Again, it's jerseymetalbook.com. So let me pause my questions there because as I said, I'm very committed to not going over an hour.
Sure.
And let's see if we have any audience questions. So audience, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question, or a lot of times people like to put the question in the chat direct to me, and then I'm happy to read it for you. So feel
Okay.
free to unmute yourself or drop it in the chat for me. And I already have one in the chat. This is this is gonna be a hard one, Frank, I'm sure. This is like when people ask me what my favorite artifact is, and it's hard to say. What were your top 3 shows to shoot?
Okay. So Led Zeppelin being number one. I think number two would be when I photographed Live Aid in 1985, which is in the book. That was the biggest one-day show myself and millions of other people witnessed. You know, I guess the third biggest show for me, I would imagine probably that had the most craziness and wild things happen was when I went to see Woodstock 99 up in Rome, New York.
Okay, wow, those are impressive choices. We got Led Zeppelin, Live Aid, and Woodstock 99.
Right.
I have to know, how did you get invited to photograph at Live Aid?
Well, originally, I one of the magazines I was working for back then was Circus Magazine, and I was pretty friendly with the owner, publisher, and I was starting to sell photos to them. And I came up with an assignment if I could photograph Live Aid, and they said they would get back to me on it. And so it was getting kind of closer to the show, and I asked them, I go, "Did you make any arrangements for me?" And they go, "Oh, something happened where we couldn't get any photo pass for our magazine." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Circus Magazine? You guys been out, since like the 60s or whatever." And so I was really surprised by this, and I was really upset because it was like the biggest show for a one-day event and charity and all that, and I wanted to be there. It was close, where I've been going to Philadelphia now for up to about 10 years at that point, and I knew the stadium, JFK, and I wanted to be a part of that event. So I went with a couple people. One was my sister, And we got there the night before down in Philadelphia at the stadium parking lot. And I just happened to get some tickets through, a person selling them in the parking lot. And they were for the field. So, being the kind of person I am where I always like to get to places early, be right there in the beginning of the line, when tickets go on sale back in the day when I was a kid, and always going to certain events like Central Park had shows, where, you were able to get down close sometimes, or places, just where I was able to get close and not be so far back. So I was able to photograph, and I was able to get and sleep right in front of the door of the stadium, and there were doors that went right around the whole entire building. So I was at one of them. I was at one of the closest ones to the entrance, where when you go down onto the field, you could head right there to the front of the barricade, and it was the closest one. So that's the one I went to, and sure enough, as soon as those doors opened, they checked my bag. I raced down the staircase. Almost, I could have fell and killed myself, but I was able to get down there and then right up to the front, and I was in front of the barricade for the entire event. That started at like, the doors opened, I think, at 7 a.m. I think the first band was Run DMC. They went on at like 9 a.m. and it went all the way till like 11 o'clock at night. And I stayed in the same place the entire day. I was on top of a little photo box I was able to bring in, and I was up higher than plenty of the people around me, and I was able to get some really, really nice photos that are in the book from that day. And I didn't have a photo pass, but I was able to be as close as any of the photographers that were there that had photo passes. So it went really well for me, but I was super tired after it was all over with. And in fact, when I got back to the car, I ended up passing out in the back seat. And the next thing I know, I was waking up in my driveway, which is like over 2 hours away.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's the tenacity that had you sneaking into New York and
Right.
photographing Led Zeppelin as a preteen, got
Yep.
you those great photos of Live Aid as well.
Yep. And sometimes, you have to go out of your way. You have to be crafty. You have to be able to, okay, if I can't do this, can I do that? And just be able to quick think, like, how can I get out of this situation and make it better for me, in the next 5 minutes or whatever. I was always into, like, trying to get the best photos. And so I had to move around, the seat that I was in. But then sometimes if I saw an empty seat, I would take it. Or if I saw like a person that was not guarding a certain area down by the front of the stage, I would kind of move down closer. I always took advantage of a situation, and I still do to this day. And that's why I'm able to flourish in my career still, because I take advantage of situations that other people don't maybe notice right away. But I will, because I've been doing this for like 50 years. So, I'm very attentive, like, to what's going on around me, and I know what I can get if I go and step further out than many people would.
Having nothing to do with the book, that's a tremendous life lesson from Frank there.
Yeah,
The third event that you cited was Woodstock 99. Tell us
right.
just a little bit about why that one stands out for you.
So for that one, I was able to get, I think, multiple assignments. And I had a van at the time, and they had an area for press, and it was a very nice, just cut grass area. It wasn't all weedy or anything like that. And we all parked near each other, so all the press did, and they were from around the country. And I was able to get like a laminate for myself, and just entrance into the different areas that the press are allowed to go into, as well as the photo pits that were in front of the stage. And so some of these bands I never saw before. A few of them, most of them I have, and most of them I shot multiple times over the years. So I was just getting my bearings. I was doing a little cookout on my own, because I had room to, bring like a little thing to cook with. And I was doing like my own, camping excursion right there in the outside the field where everyone was camping and getting ready to watch the show. And it was really exciting stuff. I mean, you got to see a lot of things, you know, people walking around naked, people throwing mud at each other that really wasn't mud because the sewer
The porta
system kind of
potties.
backed up, and then, and they talk about that in the movie
Yeah.
about Woodstock '99. And so I got photos of people, the mud people. I got, people lighting things on fire at the end of the event. I got people, just going crazy. You know, people were like, girls were like half naked on sitting on top of guys' shoulders right in the middle of audiences, and then there were some guys that were trying to touch them. Just a hand out there, a hand here, and it was just, it was insane. And some of the bands like Limp Bizkit, went into the lead singer. They found a piece of board that they took down from the side of the walls that were all standing at one moment. And the next thing you know, they're being torn down, and Fred Durst is riding the board on top of the people. He was surfing everybody, and I thought that was really funny as hell. And I never saw that before. And then just seeing the craziness of how people act, in an open field for 3 days. Some people had to leave because they couldn't take it anymore. It was too hot. The water was expensive. Everything was just too much for some people, and they couldn't take it. They had to leave like that night of the first day, and I ended up staying right until the fires broke out. Uh, and it was crazy. I've never witnessed that before as a photographer. And I was at least, I don't know, 5 6 hours from my home, and it was getting pretty dangerous. They were knocking down the towers. They were ripping off the band's merch. People stole out of the ATM. They ransacked the tool company had like a truck there. They ransacked that. They torched like 7 or 8 tractor trailers filled with soda and all kinds of other merch, and it was deadly at some points, and I had to get the hell out of Dodge, and thank God I did, because we were sort of like the last area that was a safe zone until everyone started to go haywire, and then I just got out of there, and I was able to finally get some sleep and a couple hours away because I wanted to get as far away from that as possible. But it was very memorable. I got some amazing photos. They landed in, a few magazines, and so it was just something that stood out in my career.
I'm so glad that you agreed to do this, Frank. Thank you, because you're in the business of documenting stories, but you have these amazing stories yourself. So this is
That's
great.
right.
Here's another question from the chat. What's your favorite film to use?
At the time, my favorite film to use was Kodachrome slide film. It's very rich color film. It's very good under lighting, certain lightings, especially like if you want to use a flash, or if you're using like a higher speed slide film. The no flash is good there, and you can get some really great colors. But unfortunately, Kodak stopped developing Kodachrome slide film. They discontinued it, but there's still Ektachrome out there, and black and white film and color print film. So people can still use that if they like, but most people these days use digital cameras and cell phones and go to concerts. Most people, as you know, bring cell phones to concerts, and there are some people that might be able to sneak a camera in here or there, and take some really nice photos. But a lot of times it's for their own personal use, and it's not for like magazine usage or books or television, and albums, which is where I sell to some of my clients around the world. And so everything now has to be scanned and sent out, through the computer. Before it was through the mail. So it's a lot faster and a lot faster gratifying for sure.
Okay, here's another question in the chat. Do you have a favorite Jersey music venue? You listed some earlier, but what's your favorite?
Um, Well, a lot of the venues that I liked back in the day no longer exist. They're either blown down, became an apartment building, or uh, like a restaurant. But I like going to these days. I still like going down to Asbury Park, to Convention Hall, Paramount Theater. Stone Pony's really cool too. When I can get a chance to go down there, I like going to the Starland Ballroom, which is really good. Which at same I don't know if they were owned by the same people, but the Birch Hill was also a really great club back in the day. And so the Starland used to be Willie's, and then it was called Hunkabunkas, and then it became Starland. And so many amazing bands have been through that club in Sayreville over the years. And so I'm glad I was part of it. And I still go to, like, there's a club that I go to frequently in North Jersey. It's called Dingbats in Clifton. Great club. Owner Freddie Dingo is a wonderful guy. Known him for years. He's also going to be ordering some of the first Jersey metal beer for his club Dingbats and Dingoes. And so I'm really proud that he's going to be offering it to his people that are friends with him and love going to the club. I know a bunch of the people that go there, so it's one of my favorite places, as well as the places in Asbury Park. So or Starland. So you probably would see me there on certain nights, for big shows.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, I've gone through the questions in the chat. I'll give the audience one last chance if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. I see Paul unmuted. Paul, did you have a question?
Absolutely. First off, the book's great. Been reading it since I think day one. Revisited.
Thank you, Paul.
A lot of memories in that. Besides your photos and your own memories, can you tell me a little more about your process? You have ads from the aquarium in there. You have other assorted memorabilia. What's the process on you gathering, going out and getting some more of that stuff, unless you have it in your basement like I do?
Well, I being a music photographer and a photo agent for for 50 years, you gather up quite an amount of photos that you can use. And over time, I just realized I had such an amount of New Jersey bands, especially heavy metal bands. And I just had other things available to me at the time, which one was the Aquarian that offered their newspapers to us to do the book. We told them that it was going to be a book from 1969 to 2021. We ended up putting a whole bunch of them because they allowed us in their archives, and I went through like each newspaper from 1969 to like the late 80s. And I just was scouring pages, taking photos, and then finding some of the bands back in the day to kind of kickstart things off with. I started with JJ French from Twisted Sister, who's been a friend of mine since the early 80s. I photographed their band many times. And then I got into finding other bands like Harlow and Gabriel and Another Pretty Face. And bands from back in that started the scene. And we kind of went from there, going through the 2 decades. And Alan knew a lot of band members, and so did I, from the later years, and that we were able to put that together and start collecting stories from them. Then I would be gathering my photos and showing them to Alan, and then we would go through the process of picking out the best photos per page, and then we would get photos from band members, and then we would pick out their best photos, and then would put the words and the photos together and see how they would fit per page. And since we had a lot of time because COVID was happening, it gave us hours of just looking at the computer, going page after page, saying, oh, does this look great? Oh, maybe this would be better if it was here instead of there. Maybe this photo would be better if it was bigger instead of smaller. And so that's how it went through 2.5 years of going back and forth, through pages and pages. And, it's like putting together a gigantic puzzle that, it just takes time and effort, and to have that free time that we all had at the time. For a good part of us, a lot of people weren't working, or they were struggling trying to find work, and thank God we had our other careers going on, and I was still able to sell photographs at the same time putting together this book. And so because it just happened to work out during COVID, that was the best time for us to put together this book.
Well, thank you. I wish you best of luck. I can't wait to read the second volume.
I appreciate that, man. And we're working hard on it. We got about halfway through it. Again, we're not putting it together. We're not putting it together in order. We're putting it together when we get the photos and stories in, and we put them in the pages. And then from there, then we start locking everything up to making sure that it looks good, and everything seems to work out fine. Then we'll put it out for printing.
Cool.
Awesome. Great questions, Paul. Thank you. Anyone else? Last call. All right, Frank, I want to make sure you have the last word. Well, not really, because then I need to make an announcement. But is there anything else, Frank, that you would like to add before we close?
Well, I would just like to say that if you haven't picked up any copies of the book yet, please go to jerseymetalbook.com, where you can see our book. You can read up a little bit about us. You can see the other merch we have. And we're still in the middle of our documentary. So we're hoping for a 2026 release. And the beer, of course, will be coming out on September 13th. If any of you out there care to try a new beer, American lager, this might be one for you. And if you're a Jersey Metal fan, it'll be the right kind of beer for you, for sure. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy reading the books when you can get them. And I'm looking forward to a great second volume, for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Again, everybody, you got to go get this book. You want to make sure you read the first volume so you're all caught up before the others come out. So jerseymetalbook.com, go get it. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Again, we'd love to keep in touch. Please follow the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music on our social channels. Visit our website, which is springsteenarchives.org. And maybe we'll see you at the next Conversations with our curator. This is a special one. It's featuring the author of the Little Golden Book about Bruce Springsteen, because who doesn't have fond memories of the Little Golden Book series? We'll be talking about what goes into writing one of those famous books and passing a love of Bruce on to the next generation. So again, thank you so much, Frank. Everybody go to jerseymetalbook.com and also springsteenarchives.org. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Oh, man.